Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and today I have 10 bold predictions for the NBA in the calendar year of 2025. And this isn't just the end of this season. This means we're going all the way till January 1st, 2026. We can talk about free agency, what in general happens in the offseason, trades, player movement, where teams finish in the standings, awards. Everything is fair game for this list, and I do think I went pretty bold with some of these predictions. Some are bolder than others, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on these predictions down below in the comments. Which one is your favorite? Which one is the best chance of coming true, and which ones do you think are completely absurd? And I'd love to hear some of your predictions for this calendar year as well. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoy, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos, and let's get into this list. Let's start off with a bang. My first prediction is that LeBron James announces that he will be retiring at the end of the 2025-2026 season. So basically, LeBron starts his final year of his career in 2025. And that might seem crazy because LeBron is still putting up insane numbers, and he recently said after a game that he feels like he could still play at a very high level for 5 to 7 more years. And I think there is a world where LeBron just keeps coming back and playing more and more and more because he can't take himself away from the game and he's just still that good. But then I take a look at his contract right now, and his contract will be expiring after next season. He does have a player option, so he could accept that, but it feels like that would just be a perfect moment for him to go ahead and bow out. I think LeBron is the kind of guy that wants to go out on top, still is one of the best in the world, because while he's regressed a little bit, he still is one of the most dominant players in the sport. I don't think he ever wants to like truly fade away, you know, to be more of a role player rather than an all-star, all-NBA level guy like he still is at the moment. This season, he's gotten a chance to play with Bronny James, so that'll be one more year next year. I don't think he's going to try and stay all the way until his son Bryce comes into the NBA, who just committed to Arizona for college basketball. Congrats to him. But I feel like LeBron, the way that he's been talking recently and speaking a lot more and more about retirement and just the way that he's looking at life after basketball, it feels like to me he's dropping some hints that 2026 will be the year that LeBron James retires. And that feels kind of crazy to say with, again, him still playing at this high of a level. But I think he wants to go ahead, ride off into the sunset as one of the best in the world, and start trying to, you know, eye a little bit more towards ownership once the NBA eventually goes into expansion, which I do think also happens sooner than later. My second bold prediction is that Victor Wembanyama is going to make his first playoff appearance this year. I really did not see that as a possibility coming into the season just because the Western Conference was so stacked. But the Spurs, if the season ended today, would be the 9 seed. So they would be in a play-in game, and at the moment they're just half a game back of the Timberwolves at the 8 spot, just 1.5 games back of the Lakers at the 7. The Spurs are really in position to make a push for a real playoff appearance in Victor Wembanyama's second season. He's playing at an all-NBA first team level. They've been dealing with some injuries throughout the year too, so as they get guys healthier and if they make an addition around the deadline, which if I'm them, I would at least try to go for somebody, then I think the Spurs could be a really interesting sneaky team to grab one of those 7 or 8 seeds at the end of the year. And it feels like Wemby just keeps getting better and better. This would be a big legacy moment for him to not only potentially make all-NBA first team, to also grab a depoy, but in his second season, take a team that last year barely won any games and drag them nearly single-handedly at times, it feels like, to a playoff appearance in what seemingly was a completely stacked Western Conference. And you put him in a play-in game, I think he's going to put on some monster performances. Give me Wemby to end up in the playoffs in this season. Sticking with guys who are going to win awards, my third prediction is that gilgeous-alexander not only wins the MVP, but wins it pretty comfortably. He right now is on a tear. It's reached a point where he is the betting odd favorite to win the MVP award, and in my opinion, that's the way it should be. And that's not just because I'm a Thunder fan, it's because he has led a team that's been without Chet Holmgren, one of the most impactful players in the league, to easily the best start in Oklahoma City Thunder history. Right now, they're running away with the 1 seed. They're on pace to win nearly 70 games with Chet being injured, and Shea's putting up easily some of the best stats out of anybody this season. He's up there, I think, second at this moment in points per game. He's doing it highly efficiently. The defense is there. All the advanced metrics are in his favor. Everything, in my opinion, right now points to Shea being the MVP of the league. As great as like Giannis has been, and Jokic, who in my opinion is the only real threat to take it away from Shea at this point. Like, he's putting up nearly a 30-point triple-double. Jokic is doing historic stuff, but still the metrics favor Shea at this moment. And I think the gap in the team success between the Thunder and Nuggets at the end of the season, combined with the way that Shea is still playing out of his mind, even if some of the numbers aren't up to Jokic's, is going to lead to him just being by far most people's pick to win MVP. I don't think he wins unanimously or anything like that, but I think right now, while we have a heated MVP debate, that will not be the case by the end of the season. My fourth prediction is basically 3 in 1. I want to predict some player movement. De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Durant, and Zion Williamson are all playing somewhat somewhere different going into 2026. Let's start off with De'Aaron Fox. This is kind of an obvious case where the Kings are bad right now. They fired Mike Brown, and it hasn't been much better since he's been fired. Fox has been playing really well, but the team does not feel like it's set up for any long-term success. It seems like they're on pace to miss the playoffs for a second straight year after having that magical season back in 2023. And De'Aaron Fox has not signed an extension. Rich Paul recently met with the front office. Everything to me is pointing to a potential De'Aaron Fox trade request, or at least a big rumor surrounding him requesting a trade going into this year's offseason. And if, say, we get to the beginning of the 2025-2026 season and the Kings are starting off slow, I think a formal request could come at some point pretty quickly. So yeah, give me De'Aaron Fox on a different team before the end of the year. Kevin Durant, kind of similar thing. The Suns are playing bad right now. I just dropped a full video about the way they've been terrible this season if you want to hear more about that. But I think KD's reached a point where everybody knows if things aren't going well, he's willing to move spots to try and find somewhere where it could go better for him. The Suns are honestly just a sinking ship. There's really no way to fix this team. They've exhausted all their assets. They don't really have the ability to bring in real difference makers unless they get extremely lucky in the trade market, which I don't think they do. And I think they would rather try and trade Kevin Durant before they are willing to give up a much younger Devin Booker, who has been there for his whole career. So I'm gonna say, even if Kevin Durant doesn't request a trade, I think he potentially gets moved this offseason. And then with Zion, the Pelicans right now have 5 wins. They're on pace to win like 14 games. It's been a nightmare season. Everybody's injured, and Zion is one of those guys that's kind of always been the case for him throughout his early career so far. Although not even early career, like it's been 5-6 years, and Zion really still can't stay on the court. And I think the Pelicans are going to be done with it. They're going to go ahead and move off of him. There will be some team that, even though Zion is so injury prone, is willing to buy low on a guy who at one point was considered a potential generational talent. So I think Zion gets traded. I think KD does. I think De'Aaron Fox does. All 3 of them will be gone. This will be a real year of big time superstar level player movement. And for my 5th prediction, I think the Rockets get heavily involved in that player movement and add not 1, but 2 real stars to this roster throughout 2025, specifically in the 2025 offseason, because while they are really good this year, I think their playoff ceiling is pretty low just because the offense is kind of a mess right now. Now, defensively, they are better than almost anybody, but I don't think they have enough juice to really beat a lot of the top teams in the Western Conference. So I think they probably lose in the first, maybe second round of the playoffs. Use that time to evaluate this roster and figure out what they need going into the offseason, and what they need are real difference makers and star level guys on the offensive end. And I think they could go after pretty much anybody. If a star becomes available, expect Houston to be in the market, or at least the rumors for that guy. I could see it being De'Aaron Fox. I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see it being Kevin Durant. Recently, the Rockets added a Suns pick to try and potentially lure them into making a deal with Houston if one of those guys, whether it's KD or even maybe Devin Booker, becomes available. I don't think it would be Zion like we talked about earlier. I could see like a Brandon Ingram potentially too, but maybe less so. I don't know. I'm not sure who the 2 guys are going to be. Maybe it is just De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Durant or something like that. But I think that they go ahead, they give up some of their young pieces, they trade away a lot of those picks, they use their movable contracts, and assemble a team that is one of the scariest forces in the NBA going into 2026. And speaking of scary teams, my 6th prediction is that the Cleveland Cavaliers finish with the best record in franchise history. You might not have noticed it right now, but the Cavs are currently on pace to win 72 games. Now, I don't think they reached that mark. I don't think 70 is out of the question, but I think they more so settle around like 68-14 or 67-15 or 69-13. Really just they beat their previous record of 66-16, which came in 2009, I believe it was, with LeBron, of course, leading it in his first Cavs stint. I think this is going to go down as the best regular season team in Cavs history. I mean, at the moment, they're 29-4. They have some tough games coming up, but they just keep finding ways to win. Donovan Mitchell has been the head of the snake, but like Mobley's become an all-star, and Garland has bounced back, and Jared Allen is awesome, and all the role players are stepping up. This team is just a well-oiled machine. They've got one of the best net ratings in NBA history. They just really don't lose basketball games. So give me them to go ahead and finish with right around 70-ish wins and have the best record in Cavs team's history, which is crazy when, again, you consider the fact that they've had LeBron James for 2 stints. Sticking in the Eastern Conference, my 7th prediction is that the Philadelphia 76ers pushed their way up to top 5 in the East before the end of the season. They had an abysmal start to the year. They were easily one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. They couldn't get anybody on the court, but recently it's been a lot better. They are 8-2 in their last 10 games. They've now won 4 straight. They've moved up to 13-17, which in this East only has them 3.5 back of the Milwaukee Bucks at that 5 spot. And I think there's a real chance if they could get guys on the court consistently, they could catch up to them. They can make it interesting. The Orlando Magic are dealing with a lot of injuries right now, so I could see them dropping in the standings a little bit, with Milwaukee moving up and then Philly slightly slotting in there at 5. I just think if they could keep playing the way that they have been playing as of late, they could really continuously be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference over the second half of the season. They could look a lot more like the powerhouse that I expected them to be going into the year. So yeah, I'm gonna say Philly continues this hot streak, and after an abysmal beginning to the year, they still find their way into the top 5 and manage to avoid the play-in tournament. For my 8th prediction, I'm gonna say that there are at least 5 first-time All-Stars this season, between a lot of guys having amazing years, career seasons, and a lot of injuries going on specifically in the Eastern Conference. I think it's a perfect storm for a lot of young players to get on those teams for the first time. Like out in the East, I think Evan Mobley should firmly be an All-Star right now for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'd be shocked if he didn't get in. I think Cade Cunningham has made a compelling case to be in that All-Star lineup. Tyler Hero has been the best player this season for the Miami Heat. I think he could potentially get a nod. I think Jalen Johnson for the Atlanta Hawks could be in those conversations too as he pursues this most improved player case, and the Hawks have been a lot better than expected this season. Out there in the Western Conference, I am certain that Wemby is going to be on that team, and I think Jalen Williams, with the way the Thunder have been playing this season, could also go ahead and get a look. I just think there's a lot of potential for first-time guys making it onto these teams, and that's cool to me. I would love to see a lot of young guys get that recognition, and I think at least 5 of them do end up getting that. For my 9th prediction, I'm going to say that Jimmy Butler is a Warrior by the trade deadline, but that ultimately the Dubs still miss the playoffs. This feels like a perfect scenario for me where the Warriors are going to feel extremely pressured to do something because they have gone from 12-3 to 16-16. Their first move in adding Dennis Schroeder has not gone well at all. He's not been himself, the team, and he really don't mesh all that well. A lot of the role players who were playing amazing to start the season has started to come back down to earth, and Steph Curry, I believe, is probably going to put some pressure on this front office to make moves happen because I'm sure he doesn't want to spend the last few years of his career playing on teams that end up in the lottery pretty consistently. So I don't think the asking price for Jimmy is going to be that crazy by the deadline. I think eventually it'll become well known that he's not going to be a Miami Heat next season. He's either walking for nothing in the offseason or the Heat could get something for him now. I think Pat Riley caves. They trade him over to Golden State for like Andrew Wiggins and probably a couple of other pieces. And while Jimmy, Draymond, Steph is a pretty interesting big three, and I do think Jimmy Butler will help them, I ultimately believe that they'll be behind a lot of other squads, that they will not have time to make up the ground, and even if they make it into the play-in, it won't be enough and they will miss the playoffs entirely. I kind of see it as potentially a similar situation to like when the Mavericks trade for Kyrie Irving at the deadline, and it was like, oh, you got Luke and Kyrie now, how is that going to work? You know, can they make it into the playoffs? And ultimately they fell out of the playoffs playing entirely. They tanked the last couple games to try and get to that point, and it ended up working out in their favor. I could see something similar where like maybe even though the Warriors missed the playoffs, they get a decent pick and then they reshape the roster around Steph and Jimmy and whoever else is still there going into next season, and then maybe they look a lot better. But I think this year they add Jimmy Butler, they panic, they say we got to do something, and it's him, and it isn't enough to put them in the playoffs anyways. And finally, for my 10th prediction, I'm going to say that the #1 overall pick this year lands with the Toronto Raptors, and that going to draft night, we don't know who they're going to take #1 because Cooper Flagg has always kind of been that guy, and he's been absolutely awesome in his first collegiate season, his only collegiate season, who am I kidding? But Dylan Harper is someone who is rapidly making a name for himself. I've seen a lot more people say, hey, could he be the #1 pick? And I think in most scenarios, Dylan Harper goes #2 behind Cooper Flagg. Really, most of the tanking teams, I think, take Coop 1, but the Raptors feel like one of those situations where I just love the fit of Dylan Harper in Toronto so much. To me, that's like the dream destination for him to go ahead and land in out of any of the top tanking teams. And so I think that puts them in a situation where they kind of think about it a little bit. I think they might still go Cooper Flagg because Coop, Scotty Barnes as that defensive front court of the future is disgusting. But I could also see a world where they go, let's just take Dylan Harper. Let's get our point guard, our lead scorer of the future to put next to Scotty Barnes. You now have that guard forward duo. You've got some interesting young pieces around them. And then boom, you've got this intriguing young core that can maybe start to make some noise quickly. Or maybe it's a scenario where like they get the first pick and then they don't want to take Cooper Flagg, so they trade down. I don't know. I just think if the Raptors got the #1 pick, it would be one of the most interesting scenarios because that to me feels like one of the realistic moments where we could actually see Cooper Flagg fall to #2. And those are my 10 bold predictions for 2025. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the predictions down below in the comments. Which ones did you like? Which ones did you hate? And some bold predictions of your own. As I said earlier, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Let me know what other stuff you would like to see on the channel here in 2025 too. I hope you have a happy new year. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Everyone, say it back.